The official word comes out from the Eagles that they have released running back Ryan Mathews. We'll welcome our 97.3 ESPN Eagles insider, John McMullen. John, we knew this was coming. You knew this was coming. We talked about this. I think I asked you a couple of weeks ago, when was this going to happen? Today is the day they've released Ryan Mathews. What are the details about that? What kind of money do they save? And I know you weren't surprised, but there is some finality now on the Ryan Mathews book.
Yeah, finally. Obviously, we all kind of knew he was not the Eagles' plan. So the hope was that he would at some point be able to pass a physical. And from that standpoint, the Eagles gained about an extra $1.1 million to $4 total of salary cap relief. So essentially, they get $4 million of relief, and they're back up to a little over $12 million. So from that standpoint, it was important for them, but it was, obviously once LeGarrette Blount came in here. And by the way, there's no guarantee Ryan Mathews will ever play football again after he suffered a herniated disc against the Giants last season. So we'll see how that goes, but he was able to pass a physical, and he's finally been officially released. And as I mentioned, there was some number switching last week where LeGarrette Blount switched from 35 to 29.
Right.
Got that number away from Terrence Brooks, and Terrence Brooks all of a sudden shows up at number 24, which is Ryan Mathews' number. So that gave you a pretty clear indication he wasn't coming back.
First strong hit, maybe. John McMullen's with us. So I saw a tweet from one of your colleagues, John, this afternoon that said the Eagles had $12.5 million in cap space before free agency, upgraded a bunch of positions, and now that cap space is at $12.6 million after Mathews is cut. Would you agree with that narrative that they've improved at different positions and the cap space is right about where it was before they went into free agency?
Yeah, it's definitely where it was before they went into free agency. And, I've been talking about this theme all the offseason to you and Mike. Hey, you can criticize Howie Roseman if you want from a personnel standpoint, but as far as handling the salary cap and manipulating numbers, he's one of the best in the NFL. And you see that a team that basically had either was the second or third lowest space throughout the offseason. The amount of moves they were able to make is astonishing. And we'll see how they all work out, but on paper they certainly look better. Obviously, the number of positions. So you have to give Howie Roseman a lot of credit for that.
John, it's Scott. I know you've written about this on 97.3ESPN.com, but Darby has had a couple of days now in camp. How's he looking? How's he progressing? And how do you think he's fitting in with this group?
Well, he's looked very good. I think it tells you a lot. There's two ways to look at it, obviously. And he showed up. His first practice was the 16th day of training camp for the Philadelphia Eagles. And he was thrown in as the starting left corner. On one hand, that tells you he's a really talented kid. The Eagles haven't had a cornerback with his kind of speed in forever. So he's a huge upgrade. But it also tells you just how depleted they were at that position as a whole. Because even if you acquired him and had confidence in some of the guys on hand, you'd sort of take it slow with him and pump the brakes a little bit, let him get a chance to get used to his surroundings. Eagles don't have that ability. They need him on the field. They need him on the field as quickly as possible. And his athleticism has shown up right away. If you stick him out there and say cover whomever man to man, he can do it. And he's done it in his first few days of practice. He's made a lot of plays. He's already intercepted Carson Wentz on a fade to Matt Collins. He's broken up passes to Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith. He's just worlds apart from every other corner on this team.
Now, given Darby's arrival, what do you think that does at the nickel position? And maybe this will be part of it, but where do you see Rasul Douglas kind of working himself in?
Well, I think this gives them an opportunity to slow things down with Rasul because he doesn't need to be on the field now. I think that's the most positive aspect, and he'll probably settle in as the fourth corner as we head toward the regular season. The nickelback slot is still up for grabs because Ron Brooks is hurt right now. He hurt his hamstring against the Packers. He's not been back in practice all week. He's certainly not going to play against Buffalo on Thursday. And that opens up a number of scenarios. Patrick Robinson, with Darby's arrival, has now started to take reps in the slot. He had not done that before Darby was here. And then you have sort of the big nickel look with the three safeties, where they put Malcolm Jenkins down in the slot, and they inserted Jalen Watkins last year, but they were not very comfortable with that. And that's why Corey Graham is here. He's immediately taken over that role. And so if they go big and play that, it'll be Malcolm in the slot. It'll be Corey Graham next to Rodney McLeod at safety. And Jim Schwartz is a lot more comfortable with that. I think a lot of it's going to be game planning on a week-to-week basis. If you're playing Cole Beasley, for instance, you don't want Malcolm in the slot. You probably want Ron Brooks or Patrick Robinson. If you're playing a bigger receiver, like, say, Jordan Mathews, for instance, you probably want Malcolm in the slot.
I saw where you had written about a matchup that took place between Malcolm Jenkins and Nelson Agholor, kind of, mano a mano there at practice. I think that was today. Tell me about that. I saw what you wrote, but with your words, I'm guessing it'll be even a better picture to paint. It sounds like it was a pretty fun thing to watch.
Yeah, it really was. They were really into it. That was actually yesterday in one-on-one red zone work, and it was Malcolm in the slot against Nelson Agholor, and they won against each other 3 times. And Nelson really kind of embarrassed Malcolm on the first 2 occasions with some really good route running, and separation's never been the problem for Nelson Agholor. It's always been catching the football. And after he got him for the second touchdown, Malcolm tried to kind of pull the ball out after it was over, and the two of them had words. And then on the third try, the two of them together, Malcolm, what I just talked about, his ability to be really, really physical at the line of scrimmage, he just chucked him at the line of scrimmage, really took him off his route and was able to break up the pass play. So it was really competitive, and there was a lot of chirping between both of them.
We haven't heard much about that. When I think about it, John, that there haven't been the skirmishes, there haven't been the scuffles, there haven't been those kind of things. I don't think. Have there been many of those throughout camp, or is it really cooler heads kind of getting the work done? There
was early on. There was a little bit of a fight. I can't even call it a full-fledged fight between Jason Kelsey and Gabe Wright, and that's it. And that is absolutely it. There hasn't been another dust-up since. I think when the Miami Dolphins get here next week for joint practices, that will change. You'll probably see some fisticuffs there. But as far as eagle-on-eagle crime, there's been none of it.
Talking with John McMullen on 97.3 ESPN.com. Eagles insider, also covers the NFL for FanRag Sports. John, overall, looking at this team, because we're going into the second preseason game, we know Peterson wasn't overly committal to how long guys are going to play, but isn't the expectation usually the second preseason game start seeing a little more of the starters, and then the third preseason game is the actual dress rehearsal?
Yeah, that's generally how it's been in the past. Usually expect the starters to play about a quarter, maybe a little bit more in the second game. But he was pretty clear about Carson Wentz. It's going to be very similar to Green Bay. So it's going to be one series and out. If it's successful, if it's not successful, maybe if the first attempt is not successful, maybe he gets a second one, but that's it. It's pretty clear his lone goal with Carson Wentz is to get him to the regular season completely healthy And we'll see about the rest of the starters. He talked about Alshon Jeffrey. He said he's comfortable with him playing. He's probably going to play, but he wasn't definite with it. And then everybody else, Fletcher Cox had some back spasms this week, missed a couple practices, so they might be cautious with him. Brandon Brooks is just coming back off an injury. They might be cautious with him. So, the really, really impactful players, and even down to Nick Foles, the backup quarterback, I would be stunned if he plays, even though he returned to practice this week. Because Doug, and he mentioned at his press conference today, he knows what he has in Nick Foles. He basically admitted he doesn't have to see anything. So I think the change in the entire NFL is gearing towards keeping these players healthy, and that means less playing time in the preseason.
You mentioned Alshon Jeffrey, John, and let's talk about him because fans haven't seen him, really yet at all. What is he looking like in practice? Is he living up to the what they hope to get out of having a true number one receiver?
Yeah, he's a true number one receiver. Same thing with him. When he's on the field, he's been very, very successful. The issues with him in Chicago, where he was injury prone, he had a PED suspension at one point. But when he's been on the field, he's always been productive. And he has, shown his ability throughout the spring and summer. It's interesting, though, probably he finally got to work. He hurt his shoulder, just tweaked it early in camp, and the Eagles pretty much shut him down at that point. They didn't let him. He would work in 7-on-7 drills, individual work, but he wouldn't do anything in the team periods. They put him. They cleared him for the team periods on Sunday. He got a little bit of work, and he dropped his first two passes that I've ever seen him drop as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. That's still pretty good, though. I mean, the guy doesn't drop the football. So I think he's a little bit rusty, but he'll be fine. He is one of those impactful players that the Eagles are being overly cautious with because they know what he is and they know what he can do.
Another one of those would be Jason Peters. I saw, Doug Peterson said today he's not sure if he'll be back for the game. It sounds like it's, personal what's going on that he's been excused from camp for now. But what's the read on Jason Peters and, what's the thoughts on him possibly missing this game?
Yeah, I mean, it's a possibility. Obviously, we're Tuesday. He missed practice today for personal reasons, as you mentioned. Doug mentioned he would talk to him later today and see how things went. The problem there is Vitae is out as well with an injury, so he's not going to be able to play. And Lane Johnson switched to left tackle with the ones today, and all of a sudden Matt Tobin was the starter at right tackle. So there's a guy who you can't kill as far as making this roster. I mean, somehow Matt Tobin might figure out a way to make it again. But they're running low of bodies, and that's what you talk about with these preseason games. I mean, obviously it's not important to win them, but guys got to play. And, if you're Lane Johnson, you're one of those impactful players and you're healthy, you got to go out there. And I'm not sure that's necessarily a great thing.
John, we in the first preseason game, I was impressed with Matt Collins. Obviously a rookie. He's trying to make a mark on this team. Very physical guy in that first game, in that first series when he scored that touchdown. What's been your thoughts on him? Is he possibly a guy they might have hit on here that can stick for several years?
Yeah, I mean, I think they think he's going to be a long-term player here. I think it's going to start slowly. I think he's going to be more of a special teams player. But he has been rising up the depth chart. He's gotten reps with the first team while Jeffrey sits out because Marcus Johnson hurt his hamstring, and he made the big play, obviously, in Green Bay. That's what he is. I mean, he's a 6'4", 220-pound guy. So he's a very, very big receiver, and you could see how physical he could be in the open field. Wasn't asked to do a ton as far as route running at North Carolina. So he's still learning as far as that aspect of it goes. But you could say that about a lot of young receivers. The Eagles think he is going to be a very, very good receiver down the line, but I think it's going to take a while. I don't think they expect him to play much on offense this season. And you know, as I said, start out in special teams, and then next season or 2019, they expect Mac to be in the wide receiver mix.
John, we know you also cover the NFL for FanRag Sports. A couple of NFL stories here. First of all, staying in the division, Kirk Cousins says he wants to remain with one team for his entire career. It sounds like a pipe dream, John.
Well, he says that. I mean, Kirk is not, and he said that to Sal Paolantonio, and Sal was there at Eagles practice today. So that's been Kirk's MO. He's a smart guy, so he doesn't want to upset the fan base in D.C. because he's got to play there, obviously, for this season. But if he wanted to sign a long-term deal for the Washington Redskins, he could have. So I think that tells you all you need to know. And I don't necessarily disagree with them when you look at the dysfunction in that front office and what went on with Scott McClugan and Bruce Allen. And then on top of it, Bruce Allen does a press conference after they can't work out a deal, a longer-term deal by the franchise tag deadline, and he calls him Kirk Cousins about 10 times in his press conference. So the fact that the team president doesn't even know the starting quarterback's name, I think Kirk has his eye on the San Francisco 49ers and a reunion with Kyle Shanahan.
You know, you mentioned the 49ers, but is there any possibility that if the 49ers have a horrible record and they're in line for the first overall pick, could they maybe steer clear of Kirk Cousins and say, nah, we're going to go with the top quarterback instead?
Well, there's always a possibility of that. They should be a really, really bad football team, and they should be certainly in the top 5 picks. So if there is somebody they like, yeah, they could go in a different direction. But remember, Shanahan, it's not a one-way street. Shanahan has a ton of respect for Kirk Cousins, and if you think about the offense he wants to run, you think about the success Matt Ryan had. He wants a pocket-style passer. And Kirk fits that definition. So I think the head coach would be very, very comfortable with Kirk Cousins.
In Dallas, Dak Prescott says he trusts the other running back, saying, quote, it's not a panic here. Listen, we understand that the other two guys have rushed for over 1,000 yards in career, Alfred Morris and Darren McFadden. I know the Cowboys are trying to downplay Ezekiel Elliott's impact on this team, but you can't deny a guy who had over 1,600 yards and double-digit touchdowns impact on a team that the year before was absolutely just difficult to even watch play.
Well, all you have to do is look at the Cowboys' roller coaster over the last 3 years. If you look at DeMarco Murray, was playing at an MVP level, they were really good, 12-4. If you look at Darren McFadden, he ran for over 1,000 yards, but the Cowboys were 4-12.
Right.
So there's a difference between impactful numbers and fantasy football numbers. I think with that offensive line, yeah, Alfred Morris or McFadden could probably get 1,000 yards if you give them enough carries. But the example I often give is being a 20-point scorer on a bad basketball team. Everything Ezekiel Elliott did, he was the linchpin for everything Dallas did, not only offensively, making things easier for Dak Prescott, a rookie quarterback, but also defensively. His ability to move the chains and keep what is a below-average defense off the field so they weren't exposed. He is the key to that team, and if he's gone for 6 weeks and 6 games, it's going to be a big impact over that period. And I say if because, remember, while he's eventually going to get suspended, and I wrote this on FanRag Sports today, you can still play sort of the time game. And we've seen it in the past, Tom Brady being the most recent during Deflategate. You can sort of they call it forum shopping in the legal world. You can find a court that will give you a stay. and you can continue to play. Ultimately, you're going to lose. And the NFL has always won because they collectively bargained the right to punish these players. And even if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, the NFL is eventually going to win. But it depends on the strategy of Ezekiel Elliott. Does he want to put it off for as long as possible? Or as a 22-year-old kid, does he want to get it over with and just turn the page? A lot depends on the strategy.
John, one more question for you before we let you go. Jay Cutler, Adam Gase says is going to play Thursday night. The over-under on the interceptions.
Well, the over-under on interceptions for any quarterback in any preseason game is essentially who cares. But, hey, I think Jay Cutler is going to be better than people think in that offense because Adam Gase likes him a lot. He had his best statistical season, didn't throw a lot of interceptions under Adam Gase. If he's got something left physically, and that's a big if because he's 34, he's had shoulder problems. I think if he's healthy, he's going to be a lot better than people think he is.
He's John McMullen. He's our 97.3 ESPN Eagles insider, also a national NFL columnist for FanRagSports.com. You can find him on Twitter at JF McMullen, and our guest each day at this time to talk all things Eagles. John, thanks so much. We really appreciate it, buddy.
Hey, thank you, guys.